Thank you, Dr. Casino. Actually, I'm older than him, and yet he is my mentor. He's been a big part of our family. Came here in 1993, but officially started the missionary for the Diaspora in 1994. And if not because of him, I don't know if my children will be in America. I don't know where to send my 4 children in this country during the time. But through his mentorship, do this, do that, do this. Even one of my daughter is a teacher, is a student of his wife. So, really long journey. Even before I leave Korea to be a missionary or to be a diaspora missionary in the U.S., I seek his advice because I don't want to leave Korea. Korea is the first country that I've worked as a diaspora missionary, and truly very memorable, a lot of wonderful, miraculous, and a lot of heartbreaking experience. And yet, a lot of changed life. So very indebted to him, and that's why even when he learned that I am coming to spend our sabbatical out of the U.S. for 3 months, he said, "Oh, we have an International Center for Diaspora Mission Symposium. Would you like to be one of the presenter as a practitioner?" And I said, "Okay, doctor, how can I say no to you? That you've been my mentor for so many years. We've been together for so many years. And for this 3 months, while my wife, because my wife suffered an aneurysm last year, I said, I will just bring you out there, but just give me time to meet with pastors, with diaspora pastors, meet with overseas Filipino workers or overseas Filipino witness, and let me just do it." And while she is enjoying, right now she's enjoying together with her brother, whom also Pastor Casino sponsored as one of the diaspora missionary in this country, she's now enjoying his presence. And never plan about it, never dream about it, that all of my life, I will be spending it with the diaspora workers and with their families. Tracing back my history as a God servant for 7 years in the Philippines, I pastor Filipinos who are members of diaspora Filipino workers for 7 years. That was 1987 up to 1993. And I was exposed to the life of the families of the overseas Filipino workers. Please let me use the word overseas Filipino workers because I'm used to it. Different terms now. They said that overseas Filipinos, overseas Filipino investors, and a lot of those other terms that they're using at the moment. So after that, I said, "Okay, Lord, what do you want me to do?" And the Lord brought me here in Korea, pastoring the other half of the family, the one who left them. And during the time, so stressful work, because during the time, a lot of them are undocumented. A lot of them are illegals. You need to be the small embassy for your members. That when they have problems with anything, because they don't have their family, you have to do everything for them. But the beauty and the excitement of it is they are a captured audience. Wherever you go to their factories, to their rooms, or to their kisuksa, you will find them there. So for 14 years after 7 years of pastoring to their families, 14 years to the leavers, I jokingly told my wife, "Oh, when can I pastor a church that is complete as a family? I'm tired of picking up people from the immigration to prison to airport, prison to airport to hospitals to police stations. I'm tired of doing it." Because during the time, probably we're only around 10 Filipino missionaries in this country, probably less than. And God probably heard my complaints. So he brought me to America 2007. But those are unforgettable experiences. Even when I'm in America for 11 years, I normally come back to Korea every year, going back to the Philippines, because I have witnessed how God works in the lives of this diaspora Filipino. We're able to plant 5 churches, diaspora churches, in this country, and they are still ongoing, and some of them are still planting churches. We're able to plant churches for their diaspora workers in the Philippines. Because one of the prayers of our members was, Pastor, I'm trying to share the gospel to my loved ones. Remember, those are undocumented, that they don't have the opportunity to go back to the Philippines. So they just stay here, they became Christian here, they were baptized here, everything. And you tell them you have to share the gospel to your loved ones. So, Pastor, we're doing it by phone. So what do you want me to do? How can somebody explain it to them? And then we do a family camp, evangelizing their family. From those family camp, we made a follow-up to their families, as called it the missionary journey, and because of that, churches have been planted. We even plant a church through a diaspora ministry here in Hong Kong. And the most beautiful of it is, through the help of Dr. Casino, we were able to witness how more than 15 factory workers turned into pastors and missionaries. Some of them are serving here at the moment. Some of them are serving in other countries. And most of them are serving as pastors to the diaspora family in the Philippines. And for 5 months, for 2 months, 2.5 months, on my sabbatical, all I have to do is just interview, meet. We've been to 5 countries, from Korea to Philippines to Australia, to Singapore, to Hong Kong, to Philippines, and now back to Korea. On Monday, we will be back to the US. And most of those travels involves meeting, sharing, preaching to 16 diaspora Filipino churches in those 5 countries, and meeting 20 pastors and missionaries, even interviewing a pastor's wife who was cooking free food for the Filipino workers in Singapore. That early in the morning, she was cooking, and then she needs to bring those free food as feeding center to the Filipinos in Singapore, which later they will invite to their church in the afternoon. What I will share today is about the challenges and issues in diaspora missions. Out of those 32 years of experiencing life with them, and from the interviews of these pastors and missionaries, and even the diaspora person himself and wives, some practical things from those experiences. Praise God for this symposium. We have presented a theological framework of the diaspora ministry, the organization, and then churches, then courses. But what I will share this afternoon is about the diaspora challenges themselves and even their families. And I would like us to go with these numbers first. Okay, there are around 10.2 million Filipinos overseas, according to the survey of the Commission of Filipino Overseas in 2013. 10.2. Now, don't count the undocumented. Or the undocumented, if you will count it, probably just about 12 to 15 millions. And out of these 10.2 millions, we are the 4th world biggest labor exporter. So an average of 6,092 daily departures every day. So it is growing from 2013, that for a year of 2013, there are 2.2 million diaspora Filipino went out. 2014, it's 2.3 million. 2015, it's 2.4, and we believe that it is still growing. That's a 4.5 increase every year. Now, that's divided into the sea base and the land base. The sea base is 517. The land base is 517,000. And this land base, by the way, is 1,873,000 out of those 2,339,000 Filipinos who are outside By the way, these are just temporary contractual workers. Because out of those 10.2 Filipinos, I have divided it into two. Those are the temporary and the permanent. The temporary are always looking back to go back to our country. The permanent decided to just stay, and the permanent mostly are staying in America, in Canada, in Australia, in Europe, but all the others, and the one that I presented to you is they are more of a contractual, meaning that they are coming back and forth to our country in the Philippines. And please, this is very important because out of those numbers, 75% are female and 25% are male. Please remember that because that is a very, very important factor in the diaspora mission. And these are, again, the statistics based from our government, that there are percentage of how many Filipinos are going out, how many of them are in these countries. And most of these countries, Australia, most of the numbers are actually contractual. They are not including the one who are permanently staying. There are some, but very small percentage in these statistics. These are only for us. As you all know, it's only for the 2.339 million contractual or temporary diaspora workers. Now, if you will make a number, and this is based on my actual interview with people in the field, because it's very difficult out of Australia, how many in Singapore, in Hong Kong. So this is based on people on the field in Hong Kong, and based on that statistics, there are around 152,000 Filipinos, and this was confirmed by a lot of field persons, especially missionaries. There is probably around 70 to 80 churches, and I got the 80 numbers, Filipino diaspora churches in Singapore, in Hong Kong. And, there are three biggest churches in Hong Kong. And probably there are around, if you could combine those three big churches, probably it will number around 2,000. But the other diaspora churches numbers around 75. And if you will, normally the Filipino congregations or the Filipino diaspora churches normally numbers from 50 down. That's the normal one. If you will ask me why, I don't know why. Because not only in Hong Kong, not only in Korea, but even in the US. I don't know, it speaks a lot to our culture because we are a divided island. So I don't know, maybe that's the reason why. So probably there are around 6,000 of them are diaspora Philippine Christians. Now, again, based on the interview from people in the field, and this is across the board, they said that probably 20% of their members are Filipino diaspora missionaries. What I mean is this, they are not directly sharing the gospel, but the most effective one is just inviting them to their churches because they have no time to personally share the gospel because they are too busy. There is a problem of places. So what they're doing is we will just invite you to our churches. So when I say diaspora Filipino missionaries, these are probably the estimated number. This might be lower. Okay? And in Singapore, you see the number, 123,000, 50 to 60 churches. I got the 60 number just to make sure. The diaspora Filipino Christians are 5,000, and out of that 5,000, you get the 20% of that 5,000. There is 1,000 Filipino diaspora missionaries who are inviting the 123,000. Small place in Singapore, small place in Hong Kong, and I consider them as the diaspora Christian missionaries. Different from the diaspora Filipino Christians. They are probably what we call the practitioners. South Korea, again, based on the number, you have 86,000 here. Before, during our time with Dr. Jessie, probably 45 to 50,000. But after more than 10 years, now it's 86,000. And out of those 86,000, probably according again to the field people, there are around 10 to 12,000 undocumented Filipinos in this country. I'll tell you later why they decided to become undocumented. And out of those churches, out of those numbers, there are around 80 to 100. Pastor Alan and Pastor Jerry, Pastor Henri is here, and I think they will agree with me that there is around 100 Filipino diaspora churches here in South Korea. And there's probably around 50, because if you will multiply that by 50, again, that's the normal number, then you have around 1,000 of them are inviting their friends, or some of them are sharing the gospel to the 86,000. Malaysia, 79,000 according to that statistics, but based on the field person that I've met and I've talked to, long-time missionary in Malaysia, there's around 70,000, not including Sarawak and Sabah. Because if you will, those are 100,000s. Dr. Thomas knows about this. There are only 20 to 25 churches. And probably small church, 1,000 diaspora Filipino Philippine Christians, and then probably there's only around 200. 200 are diaspora Filipino missionaries. Now, I've termed this as temporary again because they come back and forth. Taiwan, there's around 88,882. Thank God for Pastor Alan for providing me this, because he has a contact in Taiwan. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, I asked him because I don't have the number. Then that contact, that field person in Taiwan said there's around 20 Filipino diaspora churches in Taiwan, and probably there's around 1,500 diaspora Christians. The Logos ministry in Taiwan is big. Probably that's one of the biggest, and Pastor Alan is here. Then probably there's around 300 diaspora Filipino missionaries, practitioner to the 88,882. In Japan, very few. I have a missionary friend in Japan who go there to be missions, but really cannot take up or cannot really pick up the missions. So he is now still a student in Japan for 10 years. With one or two, try to pull up a congregation, then after that it dissolved, then after that you just go to another church, and then he will put up again, and then it dissolved. Now he is just attending an international church, trying still in his mind to plant a church in Japan. In Middle East, I think Dr. Baxter and some of you who are very familiar with the ministry in Middle East, you can give us the number. But I don't have any stats on that or any number on that. Now, I have decided the permanent. The permanent are the one who will just go out, and probably they will just go to Philippines for a visit. So these are the numbers. In Australia, there are 304,000. They don't have the statistics. I just asked a friend that I visited in Melbourne, how many Filipinos do you have in Australia? In Melbourne only, out of 7 million population. And he said probably around 50,000. How many churches? Probably around 20. How many members in those churches? Probably around 2,000. So therefore, they have 20% of the 2,000 to the 50,000 Filipino diaspora in Melbourne. USA, 3.5 million. The SBC, where I belong, the Southern Baptist Church, the Southern Baptist Convention, has around 200 Filipino churches. And then in our church, we have around 100, but GSBC, that's Good Shepherd Baptist Church, because I don't have a figure on this. But I just look on my church, we have around 100, and then we have around 50 or 60 Filipinos, and that's a combination of the traditional and the 1.5 generation. And then, of course, if you will ask me, probably just only 10% are sharing the gospel. And that's including me, my assistant pastor, and my discipleship pastor. So we're already 50% of 6. So this means lower percentage of people who are in the permanent diaspora in other countries. In Canada, thank you, Dr. TV, for giving me this figure, 850,000 Filipinos, that probably there are around 110 according to Dr. TV, but there are some who are saying that probably it might be much more higher. So probably around 120, and the 34 there are the Filipino Diaspora Church of the Alliance, where Dr. TV Thomas is included, and that's a big number of 6,000 for the Alliance Diaspora Filipino Ministry out of those 34 churches. So therefore, that's 14,000 diaspora Christians. I estimate that probably they have around less than 3,000 diaspora Filipino missionaries. Now, please, I put number, but they are not just numbers. They are diaspora people. They are people. Now, what are the challenges? What are the challenges? There are two different challenges, I believe, for the temporary and for the permanent. There are two different challenges, and that's why I was asking our theologians, because every time they talk about theology, I was trying to think, how can it be applied to the Filipino diaspora community? And as they explain about the Jewish diaspora, I was saying, oh, probably these are more of the permanent one. Why the permanent one? Because the permanent one's problem is the problem of culture and intermarriages. That's the struggle of the permanent diaspora Filipino Christians in America. What's the culture in America? And in some other place, of course, this is across the board, this is wherever we are, even in the Philippines. But the main problem of us, and I'm already an American. I'm confused already because I just took my oath last 3 months ago. So this means that for us, our struggle in that country, personally for myself, is materialism. And I can conclude that as an idolatry of self. That's why if you will ask what's the problem, it's our idols is ourselves. Why? We would like to live a comfortable, good, and all of the things in life. And that strangles us. That's the same problem of the Jewish diaspora culture. God always tells them, when you go to the country where I bring you, be careful of the culture of those people. And right now we are in that culture. Not only the problem of what we call, later I will share more of that, but for the temporary diaspora, I was thinking, oh, I can relate more of the Christian diaspora to the temporary workers. Again, that's not the theology, it's only my own, as it might be true, it might not be true, but I am just relating, because the most effective Filipino diaspora missionary are the temporary workers. That's why most of the examples that you will be hearing, as they said Filipinos here, are those temporary diaspora who are always looking back to go back to their country. They're always looking back, dead or alive. They will stay. They will stay as much as possible, and there are many reasons why they would like to stay. Again, in this country, there are only around 10 churches, 1993 to 2005, but now there are around 100. So it's growing. This means that more of the people who are leaving are diaspora. Now, please, in fairness to the permanent diaspora, in those permanent places like USA, we are trying to do missions. But you know the reasons what we do on missions? We just go to other countries in order to suppress our frustrations of mission in the place where we are working. Because a lot of reasons why: language barrier, sometimes our tradition, sometimes our Filipino culture. You are not the only one. Even Filipinos, when they see a black or white, they don't think that's an evangelism prospect. They think, oh, I'm looking for there's a Filipino, oh, that's a prospect for mission, but not the other. That's one of our struggle, and that's more on my part. Now, let me go to the challenge of this diaspora Filipino, particularly the temporary. First is the family challenge. I know you know a lot of this Filipino diaspora are having a broken family. And maybe some people are asking why. Look at the numbers. 75% of them are women. 25% of them are men. Hong Kong, Singapore, even in Korea. Now, women can live without men, right? Men cannot live without women. I'm talking about myself. I cannot live without my wife. That's why I always bring her. Because there's always that danger. So out of those 75%, now you can understand why there are a lot of adultery happening in our country. The men are taking care of the kids. They're being sent money to them, and then those money are being used for those purpose. Majority of them. Now, in due fairness, not everybody, okay? Don't look negative to our country. I love my country. We are matured here that we're talking. I don't want you to have a negative that every time you see a Filipino man who has a husband, they are faithful husband. But in our experiences, in my experiences, a lot of those divorces and separation happens because of the unfaithfulness of the one in the Philippines and also some of the unfaithfulness of the husband in this country. But I'm talking about Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, that majority of them are women and they left their family and their husband in the Philippines. Of course, again, there are some people, many people also in this, many Filipino diasporas also in this country. Not only problems with husband, but problems with children. Either the children are rebellious or spoiled. Rebellious because they're asking, where's my mom? Where is my mom? Every school meeting, where is my mom? Without mother, that would be very, very difficult. Probably for a husband to go out of the country is much more better, but for mother. Now, of course, the reason is because women are much more in demand as diaspora workers than men, especially in Hong Kong and Singapore and other. So you can imagine what happened. I can tell you stories of one of our members who's been illegally staying here for 15 years, became a Christian, found meaning in his life, become a member of our praise and worship team, for 5 years, become a member of our praise and worship team, a disciple, and because she felt that she needs to go back to the Philippines, she goes back to the Philippines, goes to his children, who was being taken care of by the sister of her husband, and when she comes home, the children actually don't want to accept her. The attention or the heart is with the one who take care of them. We can tell you stories after stories. Some of them are spoiled, just receiving dollars, and you know this. But you know what's happening? After they're being sent to school from the money of the diaspora Filipino, they will not go to school. They will get married early. After they get married early, they will have their kids. And instead of the Filipino diaspora just supporting his daughter or his son, now he has a wife, he has a husband or a wife, and the children, and they are not leaving the homes. So that's one of the reasons why the numbers are growing, because the numbers is not only people who are newly departing, but they come back and forth. They come back and forth. So that's one of the reasons. Not only family support, but even parents support. Parents are sick, parents are old. Because of our lifestyle as Filipino, you understand that our lifespan is small, short, 60, 65 years old. Most of us are sick. So these diaspora Filipinos are sending money to them. And you know what's the other additional to it? The father and the mother will invite the brother or the sister of the diaspora Filipino worker, and then they will come to the home. After they come to the home, they bring their children. And now, instead of just feeding the mom and the dad, he's feeding now a whole bunch of family. That's why the more big your house in that place, then the more potentials of your family will go with you. And I have some stories to tell. A Filipina worker, I just interviewed her 3 weeks ago in the Philippines. She's now taking care of our church. Our house become a church now. So because my sister worked in Hong Kong as a domestic helper, and this domestic helper that is now in the Philippines go back to the Philippines, and you know what happened to this domestic helper who worked in Hong Kong for 30 years or 35 years? Sending her money, trying to help her sisters, the kids. Now when it's time for her to go back to our country, because she's already old, she goes to the house where she spent a lot of money, and she cannot enter the house because the children of the sister don't want her to be there. A lot of stories to tell. Those are just one of the many stories. Because not only the family, even the nieces or mga pamangkin, what's in English? The nephews and nieces. They will bring. And then, of course, their tuition fees are a problem. So we have one member, single, work hard, 10 years ago or probably 15 years ago. Please forgive me of all those number of years. I'm not actually sure. I just remember. Work hard, was not able to find a wife because of supporting the tuition fee of his nieces. Time to go back, because caught up the immigration, back to the Philippines. When I visited him, he was stroke, just laying down, cannot talk, because most of his money goes to the tuition fee of his nieces. Was not able to enjoy the salary. And that's the reason why the cycle is unending. And to make just a little bit of a correction. These temporary diaspora Filipino workers are going out there not because to get rich, but just to survive. Sometimes it's hurt when you say, oh, it's only because they need money. Yeah, they need money. But they need money not to get rich, but just to survive. Many are still in debt. Many are undocumented. They stay illegally because of those different things. Again, I'm talking, by the way, before I forgot, I'm talking about majority are in this category. Of course, there are a lot of people out there, but I'm talking about the struggle of this diaspora Filipino Christians. You know what's the other one? The other one is challenge from churches asking for support. Dr. Baxter told us that, okay, the church can help, but it's the reverse. The Filipino diaspora Christians are not, and even churches, are not receiving help. Very few of them are receiving help from other countries. But most of the time, they are the one supporting churches in the Philippines. They can testify. That's why Dr. Casino shared to us about that. And it's all in the burden of this temporary diaspora Filipina or Filipino workers. So that's why if you will ask me, I am already discouraging them to go out of our country. I am telling them I've seen more of heartaches, I've seen more of out of 10, only one succeed. That they were able to experience what they want to have a better life after going abroad. Because of these experiences, and again, this is based on field interview and how we met them, not just the diaspora, but even their families, I am asking them, you have to stop going abroad. Why? You cannot satisfy the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes of your family. You cannot stop. Unless you live the higher purpose of God. And that higher purpose of God is to become missionary. And I'm telling you, those are the reasons why a lot of them are staying, even with their family challenges, even with all of their challenges in their home country. It's because they found themselves being useful. In Hong Kong, Pastor Chan knew this. He knows Lina. Pastor Chan knows Lina. I was in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And the person who leads there is a 61 or 62 years old. Been in Hong Kong for 30 years. The husband died already. Still in Hong Kong. He can go home back to the Philippines because the children are already okay. But she cannot go home because she is now the acting pastor of the church. Where all the members are women or are female. And a lot of those stories. So I'm discouraging them. Don't go out unless you have the purpose of doing missions to your fellow overseas Filipino workers. And please, don't just confine the diaspora to those outside of their country. Please consider the families that was left behind in their countries. Those are very important factor to consider.
So those are some of the family challenges that this temporary diaspora Filipino workers are experiencing. Now, the next challenge is the challenge of culture. Now, each one have different challenge of culture. In America, our problem is materialism and self-idolatry. That's our challenge. We are being consumed by this materialism, by very comfortable life, by all of this good life. For diaspora, temporary churches, they are being challenged mostly by their families. But even in the country where they are working, they have different challenges. For example, in Taiwan. In Taiwan, 10 years ago, I was there, or 15 years ago, went to Taoyuan. I don't know if Pastor Allen knows this, but let me go back a little bit. That Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia, mostly women. In Taiwan, almost equal numbers of male and female. Pastor Allen, am I right? In Korea, more men, because more of factories here, few women. So you can see the differences of their struggle. Now in Taiwan, there is a place wherein they abort children. Because of those illicit affairs, not just of the families in the Philippines, but even the diaspora Filipino workers himself, because they're being left by their families or by their husband, divorced by their husband, because of another woman, then what's happening is, of course, he needs to find some security in the country where she is working. And so it's a little bit normal. Pastor Kim, I was just talking to Pastor Kim 2 days ago, the English pastor of this church. He said that it even happens to Indonesian. That Indonesian man has a weekend wife. And that woman has also has a weekend husband. This means that both of them are married, and yet they are living together every weekend in this country. And now, this is not only Indonesians, this is not only Filipinos, this is the struggle of a lot of these overseas or diaspora workers. A lot of our problem is cultural in the Philippines. Okay? Because Filipinos are too much emotional. Now, the third problem is connected to number 4. 3 is the challenge of encouraging, equipping, and supporting them and their families to participate partner in the higher purpose of God, the Great Commission. Now, number 4 is really connected because they can only be discipled, they can only be equipped if there is a presence of a diaspora missionary. Now, this is, I think for me, this is very, very important. The diaspora missionary himself, I'm talking about the pastors himself or the missionary. Why? Because, probably I have to skip a little. The most effective missionary to the Filipino diaspora are Filipino missionary. We know the culture, we know the language, we live the culture. We are in touch, not just outside, we are within them. We live, we visit them, we visit their families, they counsel to we counsel to them. And Pastor Casiño have shared a lot of these things here in Korea. I have a lot of stories to tell too, but even in the Philippines, we are connected to their families because every time they have problems with their wife or husband in this country, they call us. So we are within them, and I think that's one of the reasons why. Now, let me give, before I cut my time, and through the advice, just to confirm this, I seek the advice of Dr. Narry Santos because I am not a scholar. I am just a pure pastor, missionaries. Just want to confirm, Pastor, this is what I have discovered in order to justify that Filipinos can minister to fellow Filipinos. That we Filipinos should be a missionary to our fellow Filipinos too. Diaspora. And I seek and seek his advice, and he confirmed his advice through the interpretation of this text. That because of the persecution, you all know, the diaspora Jews went out of Jerusalem. After going out of Jerusalem, they shared the gospel wherever they went. Then they crossed, they shared the gospel to the Hellenists. And part of what happened is this. Now they which were scattered abroad upon the persecution that rose about Stephen traveled as far as Phoenix and Cyprus and Antioch, preaching the word to none, but only unto the Jews. And some of the men of Cyprus and Cyrene, which were come to Antioch, spake unto the Grecians, preaching the word, the Lord Jesus Christ. And the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number believed and turned unto the Lord. This means that revival are happening outside of the Jewish culture. Now, and this is happening to the people in Antioch. Some of them are Greek-speaking, and these people from Cyprus and Cyrene came to Antioch. They spoke to the Grecians, preaching the Lord Jesus Christ. The hand of the Lord, there's a revival happening outside. That's in Antioch. And then, you know what the disciples did? Then tidings of these things came unto the ears of the church which is in Jerusalem, and they sent forth Barnabas. Pastor Moon, that he should go as far as Antioch, who when he came and had seen the grace of God, was glad and exhorted them all that which purpose of heart they could cleave unto the Lord. For he was a good man of the Holy Ghost, of faith, and much people was added unto the Lord. Now, like what they did in Acts chapter 6, because the people who are complaining are Hellenists, because they know the culture, the apostles said, okay, we choose these 7 deacons to minister to their fellow Hellenists. But look at the wisdom of the apostles when they hear that people are coming to know the Lord outside of their culture. Again, the Hellenists, they sent Barnabas. And who is Barnabas? The people who are sharing the gospel are from Cyprus and Cyrene. They are sharing to, and Greek-speaking people came to know the Lord. They sent Barnabas. Why? Because Barnabas came from the country of Cyprus. This means that it gives justification for us as Filipino missionaries to minister to our own countrymen. Because we know the culture. Barnabas knew the language. Barnabas knew the culture, even though he was a full Jew according to Dr. Narry, which I believe, and yet he was in Jerusalem during the time, and yet he was actually from Cyprus. Dr. Casino has that chapter in the scattered book, is Filipino missions valid? That a fellow Filipinos ministering to a fellow Filipinos because of that idea of cross-cultural. Now, it didn't stop here. Okay, it didn't stop here. We all know what happened. Because when there is that revival happening, this story tells us that, and then departed Barnabas to Tarsus for to seek Saul. I'm just thinking, why is it that Paul needs Saul? Paul was more of an expert. Barnabas is the first diaspora missionary in the field. Have I said that, Dr. Santos? That's actually his term, because I confirmed with Dr. Santos. The first person who opened the gospel, of course, as we all know, is Peter. But he was not in the field. Barnabas, that's why Pastor Barnabas is really smiling, is the first diaspora missionary in the field before the Acts chapter 13, when the church decided to go out and sending all of those missionaries, including Paul, to the Gentile world, and yet Barnabas chapter 11 was being sent. What do I mean by this? There is the partnership. That's why diaspora missions, we need to partner. We cannot do it on our own. I'll give you one example. A lot of those churches in Singapore are integrating their Filipino ministry with their ministry, the Filipino ministry. One of our pastors already lost his job because the pastor decided, okay, let's just integrate all the Filipinos. No more preaching for Filipinos. I will just preach. And the reasoning with the pastor is great too. I didn't blame him. You know the reason why? I interview the assistant pastor why? He don't want the Singaporeans to look down on the Filipinos as second-class citizen. That when they have a Filipino service, it's composed mostly of domestic helpers. And he said that all of our members here thinks that they are a second-class citizen. That's one of the reasons why he integrated it. Now, of course, there's a Filipino pastor in there, that new pastor, and The new pastor said, Pastor, we have a once every 2 months or once a month Filipino service after the international service, wherein they are already integrated. Now, there's another one, Gospel Light Church. Wow, small church before. But because of the Filipino maids and professionals in Singapore, from a small beginning, the church has $1 billion of property in Singapore. And they have incorporated, they allow some deacons of the Filipinos, choose some Filipino deacons from the Filipino congregation and make them deacon of the international church, which is around probably 3,000 to 4,000 members. And you know what? They still have a service in the afternoon for Filipinos. This means that they are encouraging these Filipinos to mix with the English church, and yet they are giving them freedom. Okay, you can have your own service if you want, but encourage them to go to this international service. And it lifts up the standard of these Filipinos, because one of our problems as Filipinos is we have a little bit of an inferiority complex. I'm always sharing to our Filipino workers in Korea, you're working in a dirty, difficult, and dangerous work. But don't ever think that you are dirty, you are difficult, and you are dangerous. Don't ever think about that. The self-worth because of the kind of work they're doing. And I said, I think that's also an advantage. But you know what's the other advantage of having an integrated service? Now this is my passion. When we visited Korea, no children, except my children in our church. That's why my children, I told them, you go to international church. It's good that Dr. Casino can refer. Don't go to a Filipino church. Because they are forced to come with me. Because my Bible study is in the evening. They have to come home, and then they cannot understand, going to a factory, and they love it. But I don't think that it is helping them spiritually. So I said, you go. You know what? And I think Pastor Alan, Pastor Henri, Pastor Jerry will testify on this. They have now a lot of Copinos. Korean and Filipinos. I don't know if they're using the word now. Copinos. I don't know. That's only my word. No, I don't know if that's the kind of word. You know what's the advantage of it? The 1.5 generation, second generation, which is the most on top diaspora missionary in the world, is not being used. Why? Because of the traditional. We're trying to import our cross-cultural way of raising up our kids when we go to our countries. These Filipino children are going to this international church, and they are being mixed with Singaporean children. Really, they feel that they are international people. And I said, wow, Lord, it's good. In Korea, you don't have this at the moment. As far as I'm concerned with the Filipinos. Every time I attend church, I'm looking at kids, 10 kids, 5 kids. I said, who are the people who are ministering to these children? Praise God, there are some Koreans that while in our church that we're using here, while the Filipinos are worshiping, these Filipinos, undocumented, they have 13 years old, 14 years old son and daughter. Cannot speak Tagalog. And I'm only talking about these two. There are a lot. There are many. Pastor Henri has a son and daughter who speaks fluently in Korean. Pastor Henri is my brother. And you know what the pastor did while the Filipino is worshiping? This pastor gets these 2 Filipino Korean-speaking boys and girls sharing the gospel. And these are the only 2 Filipino who knows that when you ask them, where is Jesus Christ? They will say here. Because the Korean pastors sit down with these 2 diaspora kids and they understand the faith while they have their service. I can also share to you one of our members. I will not name names of church. He's been here, the mother is here for 22 years. The father was in the Philippines. The son grew up in this country already 15 or 16 years old. He don't want to attend the church where she is going. Because nobody took care of that 15, 16 years old. I said to myself, this child is the most effective diaspora Filipino missionary or confused this child is the most effective missionary to the growing second generation, 1.5 generation in this country. And yet we are neglecting them. I hope and I pray that I could build up one day, can we just gather all the 1.5 or the second generation Filipinos in this country and have a family camp just for you? And I believe you will gather, if you will combine this 100 churches, probably you will gather around 100 Copinos or diaspora children. A lot of things to say. I don't know if I still have time. But let me go to the last one, and I think this is very important. The problem of the missionary himself. The challenge of the missionary, without an effective discipler for the diaspora Filipino Christians, it will be difficult for them to become disciples. Now, I know there are some in and outs of it, but if you will go on the number, let me go back to the number. See the number? South Korea has 86 and yet 80 to 100. 5,000, 1,000. I know a lot of my Filipino diaspora pastors, and some of you have some bad experiences with Korean. With some, not every one of you. But because we are here in Korea, we are much more blessed than other Filipino missionaries in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, especially in Hong Kong. Pastor Cha knows this. If you will rent one place like this in Hong Kong, this will cost you 100,000, probably 150,000 pesos. Do you think, Pastor Cha? That's in dollars, in Korean won. If you will rent like this, 3 million won. See, I'm short. 3 million won. $3,000 in Hong Kong. Not Hong Kong dollar, but here in Korea, wow. Just speak to any other Korean church out there. Can I do a Filipino service? Or a service in your church? Of course, not everybody, but I'm telling you, if we will just be industrious and really would like to seek one, even though some others will say no, others will say yes. And when they say yes, they will give you free food too. Some of them are even giving money. Just attend, I give you money. There are some churches who are doing that. That's one of the advantage. Another advantage, one of the problem of Hong Kong and Singapore are visa. Pastor Chan knows this, that I have to preach 3 times, 4 times in Hong Kong. From Saturday evening up to Sunday, up to 3 o'clock. I was being called preaching on Saturday that this missionary of ours said, Pastor, I'm still working. Can you just preach tomorrow, Saturday? Oh yes, okay, where is it? Then I went to the place, it's a very small place, and then 2:30 is the start of the service, and I'm waiting, all ladies. And I just stand and I said, where are we going to church? Already 2:30. And then all of these ladies unanimously said, Pastor, we're waiting for you. What will I do? You need to lead. You need to do a special number. You need to preach. You need to do everything up there. So I said, wow, I was surprised. I have to do everything. And Pastor Nya can share more about Hong Kong. Not only problems of space, but even problem of visa. That church where I spoke to, the pastors had been there for 14 or 16 years. Going back and forth from Philippines to Hong Kong because Hong Kong, 14 days after that, you have to be out. So the pastors there are invisible. They transfer from Philippines to Hong Kong, to Macau, to China, to Macau, Hong Kong. And the immigration already knew it. So the immigration said, you're over. You can only be back here after 3 months. So the pastor is coming on December with around 70 to 80 members. They have no speaker. Pastor Chuck can say more about that. We are blessed in this country. A lot of struggles, but there are some even who are helping financially. Of course, there are some setbacks into it, but I'm telling you, we are much more blessed in this country. Therefore, now let me end this. I don't have time. There will come a time that visa will be much more difficult for the diaspora missionaries. Pastor Narry can attest to that. I can attest to that as a U.S. citizen. Hong Kong, I was talking to Lorna Gabinera, one of the longtime missionaries there, and he said, Pastor, I can sense that the Chinese government is holding on us, monitoring us. Singapore, I've met 3 pastors, and all of their problems are visa now, even though they're working there for 20, 24 years. If there is any time that we need to partner with these diaspora pastors, this is the time. Time will come, they will not allow. And you know the reason why? Terrorism and some others. We need to partner with you, just like what Barnabas did with Saul. Partnership, integration, whatever, what is best for your church, for your group, it depends upon you. Hong Kong, it might be different because they don't have children. In Singapore, it is a must. In Korea, I think we need to begin one now. Because you're growing, you have a growing population of second-generation children in this country. What I mean is the diaspora. And let me end with this to give time. The precious jewel can be found in the most difficult, most dirtiest, most dangerous place. Why do I say that? When I was here, together with Dr. Casino, we minister more to the illegals, to the undocumented. And we have witnessed how many people of these undocumented people came to know the Lord, changed lives, become pastors, become missionaries. But if I will ask some of our pastors, yes, there are some who are deciding to become missionaries, but very few now, not just during our time. Most of them are undocumented. Majority of them are undocumented that time. They are captured. They are so hungry for the Word of God. Now the EPS, they have time to go anywhere. What I mean is this. Moving of people, there are some of us who are afraid. Because, there might be a terrorist in that group. Brothers and sisters, you can see the most precious jewel in those dangerous groups. Because once they become to know the Lord, God changed their life, they will give their life for the most dangerous, the most difficult, the most dirtiest people that sometimes we think. The best people who can reach the diaspora people are the diaspora people themselves. And they are within them. They will give their lives for them. Praise God for what we're doing. But look for those jewels. Don't be afraid. Mission always take risk. If we are not willing to take risk, we will just be comfortable. Me, I'm willing to leave my church next year because our church is becoming diverse. Before it's a Filipino, but God made a lot of things there. I have a assistant pastor who is a diverse pastor, 30 years old. I know I will lose some of my members. If I will, and that's the reason why I have no contact with them for 2 to 3 months. Because I would like them to, go to that pastor because one day he will become your pastor. The traditional are saying, Pastor, no, we will rebel. It's up to you. Because whether I like it or not, anyway, I will lose you. It's much more better for me to lose you now with this ministry going up than to lose you when ministry is going down. Because it is just a matter of time when you will leave me. Of course, people are asking, but Pastor, how can you live? Or how can you live? I think all of us has the same story. When we became a Christians, poor family, when we became a Christians and surrendered for full-time ministry, we don't know what's up there. We don't know. We just give our life to Jesus, that's it. If I will die, that's it. But now, if you will ask me now, even though I'm saying this, I've been in that comfortable life that I don't have just to go out of my house because no members will want to be visited their house. They don't want me. They just want me during Sunday, when they die, when they get married, whatever kinds that they would like to do. They just would like me to just do this, Pastor. And this is our problem. The problem is not the darkness. The problem is the light. The problem is the salt. And I think it's high time for us to really ask ourselves, am I willing to make sacrifices just for the sake of doing missions to this diaspora people who are in need of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's it. Thank you.